Hi, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Podium Picks. Sean Woodland and Tommy Marquez here with you inside the Working Against Gravity studios. And Tommy, we've got a good one today. We're going to go back into our childhoods because I think this kind of keeps with the spirit of what's going on in some areas of the country. Some kids are going back to school, whether it be in person. A lot of them doing remote learning. So we said, you know what, let's do a back-to-school episode of Podium Picks. Now, this is all stuff, and we're going to keep it to elementary school. This is the good things that we used to love about going back to school. There's a lot of bad. Of course, summer was over. You had to go back to school. But a lot of good things as well. So that's today's Podium Picks, back to school. But before we get into that, we want to thank Working Against Gravity, our presenting sponsor for today's episode. Always on top of the podium when it comes to helping you get your nutrition dialed in.
Yes, Working Against Gravity is our presenting sponsor, and we're stoked to have them because, quite frankly, I've been a member of Working Against Gravity for years now, and their online nutrition coaching is the bee's knees. You get when you sign up with WAG, you get 100% customized nutrition plan for you, and once you set it, it's not a set it and forget it thing. You do formal check-ins with your coach to go over your progress, make adjustments, and through that you have unlimited messaging directly with your coach, as well as 24-hour turnaround times for your check-ins so you can get your week started each week off right. They'll help develop some education and strategies and ideas to help you work through some of your challenges. For example, if I know that this last weekend I was down visiting some friends for what was supposed to be a bachelor party, but whatever. We'll work around some healthy habits and some things to focus on, maybe outside of the norm, to help me adjust and stay on track as best as possible. They have their very own tracking platform called Seismic, which syncs with MyFitnessPal or whatever tracking app you already use. And you have access to the members-only Facebook group to interact with other WAG members, maybe share some ideas, some best practices, and things like that. And they've got a special deal for just our listeners. It's the only time they've done discounts so far. If you go to workingagainstgravity.com, sign up, use the code ELITE50, you get $50 off your first month. So there's no better reason than to try it because, you know, the fall weather's coming in. It's getting a little bit cooler. Maybe spend a little bit more time inside. Focus on some meal prep, maybe some good nutrition habits.
All the pumpkin treats are coming, you know, so put on a few extra pumpkin pounds.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we love Working Against Gravity. Super happy to have them on board. And you can check them out at workingagainstgravity.com. And again, the code is ELITE50. We're also going to mention our Whoop podium in this episode for recovery for the day. But we're going to do that in a little bit, so stay tuned for that. But we're going to jump into our podium picks now for back-to-school things in elementary school. And for those of you who may be outside the United States, that's grades 1 through 6 for us. Elementary.
Or K through 6,
Or K through 6. Or sometimes it's K through 5th because middle school would be 6, 7, and 8. But we're going to keep it.
They call it primary school outside of the United States?
Maybe they do. But anyway, that's where we're focused here. So, you know, back in the childhood. And I think it's your turn to start with Spirit of the Games and Dark Horse. So
yes.
I hand it over to you.
Okay. All right. So my Spirit of the Games back to school moment, and this may vary regionally depending on when you started school, but was Labor Day weekend.
Oh, yes.
Because you basically got a 3-day weekend almost right out of the gate.
Yeah.
So you'd go back to school knowing that you get to see your friends, hang out, you do all the back to school stuff, but you know you got one last weekend of summer just hanging right at the end. So you're like, all right, we'll get going to school, but then like maybe the second or third week of school is a short week. So you're like, that's my last little bit.
And you get to ease into it with a 4-day work week.
Yes.
You know, that's always nice too.
So, you know, it's almost like it's a rolling start to the year. So that and I remember always looking forward to that. And I had friends growing up that had birthdays that weekend too. So it was a nice big weekend to around that time, depending on when it landed, to get excited for it and celebrate. Like, we're going back to school, but not really. We're going to hold on to summer for just a little bit more.
Labor Day weekend was the best.
Oh, man.
But of course, that Monday night would come, they're like, oh, no.
Yep.
Got to go back to school tomorrow.
Oh, that feeling, the Sunday scaries, which take on a different meaning as an adult, but it's all right. Dark Horse. So this one is, and maybe this is just me, but for me, it is the first computer lab of the year. So we usually did computer lab towards the back half of the week, Thursday or Friday, depending on what day your school drew. And I got really lucky. My classroom always ended up having back half of the week. So computer lab meant automatically that it's almost the weekend. And computer lab was that one time where you got to like get outside of the classroom and do something different. And you got to play some Oregon Trail.
Ooh, I remember. So my Oregon Trail, this is how old I am, was like the old green, like really old, like first version Oregon Trail with the giant ass floppy disk that you put into the thing. Yeah, that was my Oregon Trail.
Oh man, you could maybe go die of dysentery, or decide to ford the river, or caulk the wagons, or Jake over here died of a snake bite, and you got. For some reason you're loaded to the gills with bear meat, but you keep going hunting anyways. But for us also, one of the things that we always did was typing tutor. So it worked on your keyboard skills, and so you had to type out sentences, and every time you met a certain proficiency and skill level, it gave you another letter. So you would start with just the base 8 letters, ASDF, JKL, semicolon. And then it would add a letter, and then you would type a letter. And so it was a big deal. It was like you got your stripes when you got the whole keyboard. When you finished typing tutor. And that also meant you got to play whatever game you wanted afterwards. So that meant you got to play Oregon Trail as much as you want whenever you went to computer lab, because you won already. You got to play number crunchers, any one of the fun games that you got to play in computer lab that usually were only reserved for like the last 10 minutes. And yeah, and I just remembered they always gave you a candy for finishing your your keyboard. So they had one of those like 3-foot-long pixie sticks, those like ginormous pixie sticks. So like every time a kid would finish their keyboard, the teacher would just lament, because you're basically just giving like
kid crack,
and it's just like the kid just houses the whole thing, and then you're running into the next one all wired. And so first computer lab was the beginning of all that, and because you had a fresh keyboard, you felt like you had all this possibility. Finishing.
The world is mine. I have 26 letters at my disposal. And yeah, that's awesome, man. I didn't. You guys had a much more detailed computer lab than we did. Of course, they wheeled our computer in on like a giant, like it was old school 1980s.
Had a crank start.
8-bit. Yeah, it was. And I don't even think I did computer lab until I was in like 4th grade. So it was. Yeah, right when the PC started to come out. Okay, so those are good, man. Those are really good. Okay, so I'll start with my spirit of the games. And my spirit of the games is it's back to school shopping.
Oh, yeah.
Back to school shopping. And I remember in Sacramento, my mom would always take me and my brother to Mervyn's.
Oh, yeah.
There was a Mervyn's on Greenback and Madison. It's not there anymore. I think it's a Burlington Coat Factory now.
Oof.
But
classy.
It was Mervyn's. We go to Mervyn's, and then the bad thing about it is that you had. My mom was always in charge of getting the nice stuff. Like, okay, you're going to get a decent pair of pants, and you're going to get a couple decent shirts. But I do remember that every now and then we would get to pick out our own. You can pick out 1 or 2 things that just you want. Like a couple shirts. And so that was I'm going nuts. And then there's like a big choice there. Like, do I go with the Star Wars? Do I go with the G.I. Joe? Do I go with Transformers? Do I go with something else? I don't know. Do I go something that's dressed down? Do I want to dress it up a little bit?
Yeah.
Usually mom takes care of the dressing up stuff. Yep. But that made back to school shopping a little less painful, because I knew when we were in the car and mom was dragging us to Mervyn's, it was like school's coming. Summer is almost over. But I do give her credit with trying to at least make it somewhat enjoyable for us, to give us a little bit of freedom of choice. So yeah, I remember my brother getting some pretty wild stuff, but I always kind of kept it pretty.
Probably explains a lot.
Yeah, now, pretty down the middle. But it was back to school shopping was always. It's bittersweet.
Yep,
it's bittersweet. But then you got to show off that swag.
Yeah, you get some new stuff.
Show off that swag on day one. Maybe the new shoes. People ask you how fast can you run in them.
Oh yeah, little new boot goofing.
That's right. Yeah. So back to school shopping. That's my spirit of the games. Now, my dark horse is actually one that I think you might. I don't know. I don't know what your list is, but I'd be shocked if something like this wasn't on your list.
Okay.
My dark horse is wheeling and dealing at lunch.
Oh,
So when you sit down, at lunch, everybody's cracking stuff out. You're eyeing what everybody else has, and then you start. This, I guess, was the beginnings of my love of fantasy football, because you're coming up with trades. All right, I'm going to trade Dan my pudding cup and half of my thermos of whatever I have for his crackers and half of his cookie.
Yep.
And there was like that trade that always went on. There was always some kid that was always trying to started at the bottom that you wouldn't trade with. Like, I always felt bad for that kid, because his lunch, you wanted nothing to do with it. And he was trying to trade you, like, I don't know,
his chips
liverwurst sandwich
for
a chocolate chip cookie. Like, that just ain't going to work.
But they're basically the basically the Bill O'Briens of the world.
Yes, exactly.
The Texans GM.
Right, but you could wheel and deal at lunch, and so sometimes that would also influence kind of what your parents might pack. You'll say, hey, you don't need to pack that because I can get that off this kid if I try, but pack extra this because I can use that. Yeah, give me another little extra chip there so I can maybe send some over. So you would come in armed, ready to make some solid deals at the lunch table. Mm-hmm.
I love that.
Yeah, that was a good one. And then at my elementary school that I went to, I remember we were in the lunchroom and you sat. I think they sat you by. I can't remember if it was open seating or not. I think it was. But then when you get too loud, they turn the lights off because they want you to quiet down. Everybody was, heads would hit. Shh, quiet. And you put your heads down the desk, so that you're being really quiet because then they would dismiss you to go to recess. And the longer you stayed, the less recess you had. So I don't know if that was a common thing, but for some reason you couldn't just be quiet. You had to put your head on the desk as well.
The early makings of our fine American prison system.
Exactly.
Keep your head down, otherwise we don't get yard time.
That's right. No one snitch.
Best not be snitching.
Yeah, I got in trouble one time when my friend Dan made me laugh, and they made me stay late.
Oh.
Yeah, but he made me laugh. Like, don't care. You're staying. I was not happy with that one.
Yep.
Okay, so those are my spirit of the games, back to school shopping, and Dark Horse wheeling and dealing at lunch. Now it's time to get into our podium.
That's phenomenal because I got to say that last one, I didn't have it on my list, but I absolutely love it, and it's so true because if you wonder why shows like Pawn Stars exist, it's because of the foundations of that are laid at lunch. Some kids like, I'll trade you this for this, and you're like, you're basically like your own version of Rick. You're like, best I can do is this.
Yeah,
like, sorry.
Exactly. You kind of learn about bartering, and you don't even understand how that's going to help you later in life.
And you got your buddy Chumley who's just giving away the farm for everything. Yep.
Okay, now before we get into our podium, here's what we're going to do. We're going to get into our Whoop podium, and we're going to do our top day recovery.
Yes.
For the day of, we're recording this on October 5th.
Yes.
The top recovery for October 5th, 2020.
The reason we chose this is because I had a very low recovery score one day this weekend, but I managed to rally like a champ and get back into the green despite a few adjustments here. So we want to focus on some healthy habits to maybe get your recovery score up. So our top recovery scores for today, number 1, Carolee Drohan, 99%.
Ooh.
Reese Griffiths, 98%. Betsy Blake, 98%. That's good. Holly Shirley, 98%. Some of these HRV scores are crazy. Ryan Watkins, 98%. Phil Fajgenbaum, 98%. There was a lot of consonants in a row there. Aaron Blair, 98%. Derek Dodd, 98%. Kyle Wilmot, 98%. And our former co-worker, friend, and jiu-jitsu partner back in the day, Kyle Garza.
Ooh.
98%.
Nice job, Kyle.
Nice job, Kyle. Got into that top 10. So
there you go.
Congrats to everyone who showcased some solid recovery. I'm at 91% after being 9% a couple of days ago. Made a few adjustments on the fly, halftime adjustments, and came back strong.
Nice. So what did you end up doing?
So what I ended up doing so obviously I was at this event. It was supposed to be a bachelor party. Wedding got called off, but it's all good in the hood. And so we went down to celebrate him and his re-release into the wild. And so, we're celebrating. We're having a few wobbly pops and stuff like that. But I realized I got out of my bedtime routine in terms of like blue light glasses is one. I usually drink a decent amount of water up until a certain point, and then I cut off fluids so I don't have to get up to go to the bathroom and stuff like that. But I usually make sure I have a certain amount of water before bedtime. I listen to noise while I sleep, and I'll do a meditation before I go to bed. And so basically the same set of circumstances, but did those things and reinserted them right before I went to bed, even though it was technically the morning when I was going to bed. And my recovery score went from 9% to 72%.
See, it's the little things, man. Just come up with a routine and some things that work for you, and that's all good advice. All right, so congratulations to our top recoverers for today. So now we're going to get into our podium. We're going back to school. So we've done our Spirit of the Games and our Dark Horse. So, Tommy, you're up first with your third place finisher.
Okay, so you kind of touched on it a little bit, but it's a slightly different. So My third place for back to school is what I call first day fits.
Yes.
So, the shoes, whatever outfit you pick, because usually, like you said, my mom was like, all right, you got to get this pair of corduroys, you got to get this.
Corduroys.
And I'm like, all right. I got to get some socks and got to get some new chones. But then, like, as long as it would fit within the budget, I get to pick out a pair of shoes, a shirt. And I'm like, ooh, do I go Dallas Cowboys?
Yeah.
Do I do Oakland A's? Do I do this? Do I do that? And but the first day is like when you want to come in hot, right?
Yeah.
And you got your backpack. If you got a new backpack that year, maybe a new lunchbox. And that's all like the first day, like everybody's walking in like they're going to church in Atlanta. You got your best suit on, and everybody's just looking fly. So, yeah, that was, I always loved that. And then you kind of get that feeling every time you match that same outfit back together. You're like, ooh, look good, feel good, play good.
That's
kind
right.
of situation.
You learn good.
Yep,
which
learn
is,
good.
Apparently you're not learning because it's learning well. But anyway, you know what I mean.
Yep.
So that's good. Yeah, first day swag. You wanted to bring it too because this is one that didn't make my list. Is that the reason why you want to have first day swag is because what did you see the class crush?
Ooh.
You haven't seen it all summer. Want to be looking good for the class crush. You have to bring that swag. So that's a good one. Okay, so my third place is recess.
Yes.
Loved recess.
Yes.
Recess was the best because we had some we would either play football during football season. We would play basketball after that, and then we had one year, and I can't remember what year, maybe fifth grade. I remember this. There was a couple pretty big playground where I went K through fifth, where we had like this sort of side playground. And I remember this game just evolved called Trip 'em. And all we did was run around and try to trip each other. That's it. You would just run around and try to kick the guy's back legs out, and and we called it Trip 'em. Trip 'em didn't last very long.
We had that same game. Oh my God.
The authorities heard about this, and they shut that down real fast. You're doing what? The yard duty was just yard duties were basically there to make sure no one died.
We called it sweep the leg.
Yes, we called it Trip 'em. I had no idea that this was like a universal game. And you just ran around and you just tried to kick people's back leg at them. We called it Trip 'em.
And you want to know why girls wanted nothing to do with us growing up?
Exactly. It's like you're getting enjoyment out of we just run around and just trip each other. So
it's a simple game.
And I feel like the yard duties they would look at it and be, oh man, I got to go deal with this now. Like these idiot kids. And so Trip 'em didn't last very long. I think maybe a week or two at the most. But playing football I really loved playing football at recess and basketball. I had 20 points a day at lunchtime basketball, man. Just got a couple assists. Like you'd keep your stats. And so
100%.
I loved recess. And I don't know about you, but we had like if you got there before school, which depending on how long early you got there, you would have like a little kind of informal recess.
Yeah.
And then we had a recess, I think around like 10. And then we had lunchtime recess, and then we had like a quick afternoon recess. But lunchtime recess was like the big recess where you got to play like your full game of football.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, it got intense out there. I think Trip 'em was pretty much reserved for the morning recess. And you could always tell who was playing because you'd come walking in with like your jeans just all muddy and stuff, and the good old days.
Oh man.
So yeah, recess. That's my number 3.
God, I can't imagine my poor mom just getting grass stains out of everything.
Yep.
Oh, that's a great one. My number 2 is movie day.
Movie day.
Yeah.
Oh, movie day was the best.
There was nothing better than especially if you had what I would like to probably equate to in Thor 2 when all the planets align and all the everything yep. Comes into alignment and you can jump between dimensions. The was when you had either an assembly or computer lab right into recess, afternoon recess, and you come into afternoon recess, you're kind of sweaty, you're like, oh man, that was great, we just had a great game of sweep the leg, or we did play wrestling and I tombstone my buddy Ziad off a wooden structure.
I got a funny story about that, but I'll let you go.
And then you see that TV, you see the TV rolly stand just sitting at the front, just waiting for you, and you're just like, settle in, man. Yeah, we got a movie day. There's that that meme of the coach in the locker room going, let's go. I feel like that we would shout that if you walked in.
Movie day was the best.
And that's when you knew and like as an adult now, you knew either your teacher was really hungover that day or was just so fed up with life that just didn't want to deal with you. And that was the best. You're like, oh, yep, we're going to watch a movie, and then I'm going to go off into the weekend and have a great weekend.
Yes. So you mentioned wrestling. And this happened when I was not. I didn't attend I wasn't in the 6th grade. But one of my good friends, Dan Baxter, he and this kid who went to our school who's from Iran, his name was Arash Kazamenejad. I'll never forget him. Great kid. They had to do some sort of skit for class. Now, for whatever reason, they decided that they were going to do Piper's Pit. They were going to do a thing on the old Piper's Pit, Roddy Piper from the day. And for I don't know what the confluence of events was, but Dan ends up putting like a full-on pile driver on Arash in the middle of this class. And I think like there was just like the teacher was shocked. The kids didn't know what was going on. Like education. You know.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So anyway, that's my wrestling in school story.
Well, I have a great wrestling in school story. That's technically not even mine. It's actually someone that your wife works with.
Oh, okay.
That
Bobby,
is a buddy of mine.
yeah.
Bobby from who I went to college with. He told us this story about his buddy, Ben. Oh, what was Ben's last name? But basically, they would play wrestling, right? And he tombstoned this kid, and the kid didn't take it right.
Oh no!
And like knocked the kid out.
Oh no!
And they didn't know what to do, and they freaked out. So they
everybody run.
Everybody run. And Ben dragged this kid and hit him under the slide.
They stashed the body in
They
elementary.
stashed the body, and so they all run back, and the teacher's like, "Well, where's so and so? Like, what's going on?"
I don't know.
And they're like, and they're like,
dirt now.
they're like, huh? So she calls to the like the principal's office or whatever. Meanwhile, he's passed out under the slide, and I guess like 10 minutes into class, the kid wakes up and is like, comes back to class. She's like, "Oh my God, where have you been?" He's like, I just woke up and I was under the slide and like couldn't remember where he'd been, so they were off the hook. But like basically figured out, like the teacher's like, "Oh my God, you must have fallen and hit your head."
Yeah, that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
I saw it. Wow.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
Oh, that's good stuff. Okay, where were we?
Yep.
Second, number 2. We get to number 2 now on the podium.
Yep. That was mine. Movie day.
Movie day. Okay,
Yeah.
so I'm next. All right, we got lost in all of our wrestling stories.
That was great.
All right, so my number 2 is, and this goes to maybe like the first day swag. In fact, my next 2 are going to be along these the lines, but
Okay.
and this is a generational thing because I don't think they have these anymore. But it was getting that new Trapper Keeper.
Oh yeah.
Getting the new Trapper, and like for those of you who don't know what a Trapper Keeper is, you can Google it. But it's like this folder that you got. It was like a portfolio, and it had a Velcro fasten on it, and it had like you would open it up, and it had folders on that you could put on a 3-ring binder that you could keep in there. It had ways to organize your stuff. It had like another pocket where you could put like your notepad. It had pen holders.
Yeah.
And it all you could get them in cool different themes. But it was like it folded in like a binder, but then there was a flap that folded over to secure it. And I remember I had one. It was like a baseball one, and like I loved that Trapper Keeper. But showing off that like everyone take out a pen or a pencil and a sheet of paper, and you're like, oh, okay. Bam! Drop the Trapper Keeper on the desk. Open it up. Show everybody. Like, oh, I'm sorry. Let me go through my papers here. It's in the back.
If you have that extra crispy Velcro to open it up, just let it announce your arrival.
Make that noise. So getting the Trapper Keeper was a big decision. Because you wanted to make sure that you were showing off properly when it was time to do some work. It looked like you had an office going on your desk.
Oh yeah.
Bring out the Trapper Keeper.
South Park had an entire episode about Trapper
Did
Keeper.
they really?
Yeah, it's called I think it's called Trapper Keeper, and it's a parody of Terminator and 2001: A Space Odyssey, or maybe the 2000 presidential election.
Okay.
But yeah, Kyle has his Dawson's Creek Trapper Keeper,
yeah.
and then Cartman gets a nicer, better version of the Trapper Keeper, and I think.
I don't think they make them anymore.
People
do they?
keep trying to steal it, but somehow Cartman bonds with it and it becomes part of him. Yeah, and becomes this monster. It's fantastic. Oh God,
I'll have to watch it.
Trapper Keepers are awesome. And there was always that one girl in class with all the the long hair down to her back, and she always had the horses on hers,
Yes,
like
and
the
like markers that the marker set. Remember the
Yeah.
marker set? Like, why would you bring that marker set to school? Like, you're not going to need 50 different markers, but some of them had it.
That girl was always the one that reminded teachers she forgot to assign homework for the
Oh,
weekend.
that was the worst.
You're like, oh my
You're
gosh.
right. That is the same kid.
Jesus, Melanie, stop it.
All right, so that was my number 2, Trapper Keeper. So now we come to number 1.
My top one is something that you actually kind of mentioned
Oh,
too.
okay.
And for me, I'm going to get even specific, and it's first recess.
Oh,
so
okay. First recess. This is like the very first recess after you've gotten back to school.
After you've gotten back to school. It's the equivalent of, releasing the Hounds of War.
Yeah.
I liken it to the opening charge sequence from Infinity War, when you have like Captain America and Black Panther, rest in peace, out there leading the charge against the Chitauri. Like, that's basically what it is, because you're coming from room over here, your buddy that isn't in your class is coming from this room over here, and you're just charging to get the good playground spots, whether it's basketball or football or maybe you're playing a game of trip 'em. Right? And
Or sweep the leg.
Sweep the leg. We had this game called King of the Mountain, where in the grass, in the like grassy area of our playground in the back, there was this one little like berm, just ever so slightly. It was just kind of looks like a little bubble in the turf, and we would play. So one person, it was kind of like Red Rover, but one person would stand up on top and he'd be king of the mountain. And we would just take turns charging at him full speed and try to knock him off of his feet, off of that,
Sheesh.
off of the bubble. And if he got knocked off the bubble and off his feet, he'd like roll down the berm, and then you were the new king of the mountain. So
Okay.
it was just basically just.
Did you have to stash any bodies after this game?
But I remember this this guy Jeff Sloan. He had a cousin who we used to call Little Chris Farley. And he looked like a baby version of Chris Farley, and he loved that game. And he loved to be king of the mountain. And even though we like knock him off, he'd ask to be again, so we could just drill him and send him flying again. Oh man, it was like that didn't last very long. We'd get to play that, and then like the yard duties would get wind of it. We'd have to break it up, and then we'd go play something else, whether it was 3 flies up or 500 or whatever they call it now. Yeah, kickball. Foursquare with those gigantic playground balls. Man, that first recess, it was just like you're just chomping at the bit, and you got your new shoes on so you can run faster, and that was the best.
First recess, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Okay, so
it's like you're like walking out of the tunnel at like
play like a champion
at the
today.
Rose Bowl.
Yeah, man. First recess was just the best.
Oh.
And remember, like back in the day, that like 15 minutes seemed like a long time.
Oh yeah.
You could get a lot done in 15 minutes.
Oh man, you'd have like your main one. You'd have lunchtime, the back end, and then once in a while, I think we had like an afternoon recess. Sometimes that was like 15, 20 minutes, a little bit shorter. And you're like, just pick up where we left off earlier, and you can get some work done.
Yeah. All right. So my number 1, and this kind of goes along with the Trapper Keeper, showing that off. The new lunchbox.
Ooh, yeah.
This was, man, that was like, I put a lot of thought into what lunchbox I wanted to get. And you would, the old metal ones too. Like, I'm old enough to remember the old metal ones.
Yeah.
Like, you get the old metal ones, and I can remember a lot of the lunchboxes I had. And it's like, it depended on what was popular. I remember I had a Star Wars lunchbox, and I can still see the front of it. It was black, and it had like a TIE fighter and Darth Vader's TIE fighter and an X-wing on it, I think. I had a Clash of the Titans lunchbox. I think I had a Happy Days lunchbox. I may have had a G.I. Joe lunchbox. I know I had a football one, but like it was, it's like your first sort of, and I don't want to say status symbol, but it's the first sort of thing that you owned as a kid that you wanted to show off.
Yeah.
It would be like a bike later on in life, or your car. Like this is like, I got the flashy lunchbox here.
Yeah.
And sometimes it would come with a thermos, and you get the matching thermos and all that
yeah,
stuff.
yeah, yep.
And we had a thing where I remember after these are why the metal ones were good. After lunch, you would go back to your classroom before you went to recess, and you would stow your lunchbox. And I remember outside our classrooms had smooth like pavement, a smooth concrete, and you would just like fling those things down there, and it would slide. Plastic ones ain't sliding; those things are rolling.
Yep.
The metal ones are going to slide. Now, of course, you're chipping all the paint off your new lunchbox. We really didn't think about that, but it was cool just to be able to chuck that thing down the hallway. Like you're playing elementary school curling with your lunchbox, and you get it right in the zone, and I'm out. Like I don't have to wait to the extra 10 seconds to walk back to my room and put my lunchbox down. I'm just going to fling it, and I'm out. But I remember like there were certain lunchboxes that I wanted. I remember I see other kids having. I was like, "Ooh, that's a great lunchbox. I want to get that lunchbox. Where'd you get that lunchbox?" And then I could never find it. And I was before the internet, couldn't order it. You had to go to all these different stores. But man, I miss having a good metal lunchbox.
Yeah, and they double as storage after the fact.
Exactly,
once you retire it, you can put all your toys in it and stuff. Oh yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes we would use it to transport whatever item you had for show and tell. That's another good thing about the old show and tell. So
man, I forgot about that.
Yeah,
that was a good one too. That would definitely be making honorable mention then. Show and tell.
Show and tell honorable mention.
Yep.
I'm trying to think what else. So what didn't make your list?
This was a little bit more nebulous, but like in the fall, like once football started, you come back on Monday and you get to talk trash on your buddies who's to whatever team it was. And so this was important for me because, and I think you maybe felt this too, I was not a local fan of the team that everybody liked. So, growing up in NorCal, at the time the Raiders were in LA, and the Niners were one of the preeminent teams in the NFL, and so everybody was Niner fans. I was the Dallas Cowboys fans. I was the one blue jacket in a sea of gold and red. and so especially like from early 1990 till basically 96, 97, the Cowboys and Niners were winning the NFC in the Super Bowl every year.
Rivalry.
So it was like we would be jawing back and forth, and I got to watch my team win 3 Super Bowls in 4 years, and those are good days. Getting to come back on Monday and talk trash and
the best.
Yep, man,
good stuff. Yeah, we had a thing called, I remember at my school. I don't even know if they do it anymore. My parents still live by where I went to elementary school. It was called the Sing. It was on Friday, and you would it was like you get in the multi-purpose room, the gymnasium, and you would just sing a bunch of songs.
Yeah,
and that was always the thing they held over you. Like if you were misbehaving, not going to go to the Sing on Friday if you guys keep this up, and that usually like got everybody in to calm down because you wanted to go to the Sing. But I remember that, and
I had something similar. I had first assembly, so usually like in the fall it depends. Like maybe you're selling like Scholastic book. It's like a Scholastic book fair.
Dude, the book orders too. Remember the book orders? Those were great. Yeah.
Or it was like we'd have some assembly for like they'd bring in some. It'd be like a cool like the history of Thanksgiving or something like that. Like one of those assemblies early that were fall themed, but it just meant you didn't have to go to normal class.
Yeah.
But that was a good one. Man, lunchtime trades for sure is on there now because I'm like, how did I not forget that?
I thought it was for sure I was going to be on your list.
It was funny because we were talking about it earlier. Like one of the things, and we went over for my parents' anniversary a couple weeks ago, to have dinner with them, and my mom was like, "Hey, do you want some?" She used to put these in our lunchbox too. She's like, "Do you want some graham crackers and frosting?" And I used to love my mom just making little sandwich cookies out of graham crackers and chocolate frosting, and that was like one of me and my brother's favorite things, and getting to trade those, and because that was something that was homemade. And that like wasn't like your standard. Like I could.
You're the only guy coming with that in the arsenal.
And be like, oh, I like it, and I'd be like, yeah, this one's got a little extra frosting on it, if you know what I mean. Maybe pass over them Cheetos and some, a little something on the side.
You're like Dan Aykroyd and Bill and Eddie Murphy and Trading Places. Like, yes, okay, I'll take it. Yep, all right, you get one. Yep, okay, gotcha.
Oh yeah,
man, that was good times. I miss it. It's funny. You think back to those days. You're like. I hated it. I mean, I didn't like going to school. No one does.
Yeah.
But it was fun.
It was
just, there were some really good times there.
Yep. It's funny. The class assignments was always a big deal. Like what teacher did you get next year? And then like getting to show up and seeing who was in your class other than your close friends. School time lunch, if we got to have school lunch, my mom made our lunches every day for the most part. But like every once in a while she'd like, this is what's crazy. breakfast, if you want to have breakfast at school, was a quarter.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It was like, and this is growing up in California, farm town, like I think Fridays or Mondays was the Mexican pasteles. It was like the Mexican sweetbreads with like the pink sugar on it. And so it was like for a quarter you got that and a chocolate milk, and just went into school just laced up. And I think lunch was either 50 cents or $1. It was really cheap. But then you like, oh, when's chicken nugget day, or when's the square pizza day?
Pizza day was the best. The Aquabats have a great song called Pizza Day, and it's like totally that it. Like if I brought my lunch probably 98% of the time I went to school, but when it was Pizza Day, hey Ma, can I maybe $1? Can I go get some pizza? It's Pizza Day today. Yeah. Ooh.
Oh, the milk cart, the milk lady coming around, the milk cart. Yep. It was the worst when I was like, I had a buddy that was good at like trading for like. If people got allowance and stuff like that, and be like, oh, like I'll trade you this for 50 cents so I can get chocolate milk, because maybe you had everything you wanted, but you need something to wash it down. There was nothing more disheartening than going to the milk cart lady and then realizing all the chocolate milk was gone. It was just regular old milk, and you're like, oh
man, got to get here earlier next time. Oh, well, good times.
Yeah.
And definitely let us know what your favorite things about back to school time were. As always, there's going to be some that we left off, and I know that a lot of these are regional and maybe country specific. There might be some things out there that we don't even know about that'd be cool about elementary school. But that was a good trip down memory lane.
Oh,
so glad we got that accomplished. Hope you guys enjoyed listening and watching. We always appreciate you spending some time with us. Thanks to our sponsors, Working Against Gravity and Whoop. And have a great rest of your week. For Tommy Marquez, I'm Sean Woodland. We will talk to you next time.